Adjustment on Tuesday, May the 27th, 2025. My name is Deborah Dryden, and I'm Chair of the Board. Would the board members please go around and state their name for the record?
Marshall Williamson.
Adjustment on Tuesday, May the 27th, 2025. Oh, my goodness.
My name,
Is that what I actually sound like? Oh, my goodness.
Kevin Shea. Hamilton Court.
Amy Langy son.
Thank you. Also present are John Kinley, our Senior Project Manager, Crystal Monsegur, our Planner, Kamisha Lampley, the Clerk to the Board, Therese Hagler Gray, Senior Assistant City Attorney and Advisor to the Planning Staff, Jill Sanchez Myers, Senior Assistant City Attorney, Advisor to the Board, and Elizabeth Majors, the Veritex Court Reporter. And Solomon Fortune, our zoning administrator, will be joining us shortly. Each of today's hearings is a quasi-judicial evidentiary hearing. That means it is like a court hearing. State law sets specific procedures and rules concerning how this board must make its decisions, and these rules are different from other types of land use decisions like rezoning cases. The board's discretion is limited. The board must base its decision upon competent, relevant, and substantial evidence in the record. A quasi-judicial decision is not a popularity contest. It is a decision constrained by the standards in the ordinance and based on the facts presented. If you'll be speaking as a witness, please focus on the facts and ordinance standards, not personal preference or opinion. General witness testimony is limited to facts. For certain topics, this board needs to hear opinion testimony from expert witnesses. These topics include projections about impacts on property values and projections about impacts of increased traffic. Individuals providing expert opinion must be qualified as experts and provide the factual evidence upon which they base their expert opinion. While hearsay evidence is not specifically excluded, it is only given limited weight. Parties withstanding have the rights to participate fully. Parties may present evidence, call witnesses, and make legal arguments. Parties are limited to the applicant, the city, and individuals who can show they will suffer specialized damages. Other individuals may provide testimony as witnesses when recognized by the board. Witnesses must swear or affirm their testimony. Any individual wishing to speak as a witness today was required to sign up. If you haven't done so, please do so now. The parties to each case are entitled to an impartial decision maker. A board member may not participate in a hearing if they have a fixed opinion about the matter, a financial interest in the outcome of the matter, or a close familial, business, or associational relationship with an affected person. The parties to each case also have a right for any ex parte communication to be disclosed. Ex parte communication is any communication about the case outside of the hearing. That may include site visits as well as conversations with parties or the general public. At the start of each case, any potential conflict of interest or ex parte communication should be disclosed by a board member if applicable. These matters may also be raised by any affected party. Today's meeting will follow the order printed on the agenda. The order of the regular agenda will be as follows. All parties who plan to give testimony must be sworn in. The board may question the staff member, and then the applicant may question the staff member. The applicant presents their testimony for the case, and any sworn witness provided testimony. The board and city staff may question the applicant and their witnesses. Other parties wishing to speak for or against a case will be given reasonable time to present sworn testimony. The staff and then the applicant will be given an opportunity for rebuttal. After hearing each case, the board will review each case and render a decision. This is usually done in closed deliberations after hearing each case. The chairperson calls for a motion and a second to approve or deny the variance appeal. The decision will be made by a simple majority vote of the board. However, the board may elect to take up to 30 days to render a decision. You may remain present during deliberations, or you may call the zoning staff after the session to receive the decision of the board. If you wish to receive a written copy of the decision letter, please indicate so on the sign-in sheet. All exhibits must remain with the board. If your case is not appealed Superior Court after 30 days, you may pick them up or they will be destroyed. Appeal from this board is to the Mecklenburg County Superior Court. You have 30 days from the date of the board's written decision in which to appeal in accordance with NCGS 160D-405D. All right, I'm going to now swear in staff, so if you will step up, anyone who's going to testify, please. All right. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the evidence you shall give to the board in this action shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you very much. All right. We are going to juggle the agenda, the recommended items just a little bit. We are going to start with variance number 2025-00026 for property located at 11631 River Haven Drive. All right, Mrs. Montague, if you are ready, you may continue. Oh, okay. I'm sorry. And your name, I'm sorry.
I'm Andrew Poindexter with Stormwater.
Okay,
Morning.
thank you, Mr. Poindexter.
Of course. Thank you. This variance is for property on River Haven Drive owned by the McClays. It's in the watershed, so it's a variance request from buffer impacts of BUA and 23.61 of the UDO to allow them to build 1,600 square feet of built upon area, with the condition that an approved mitigation plan is followed during permitting and that the state also approves the impact. This is just a general map where the property is located. There's been other variances given over time for similar situations along this same road. This is a property showing the total buffer area roughly from GIS. About 9,500 square feet, 9,600. This was the original property back in 2023, showing just the total amount of built upon area. And the applicant then was going to demolish and then rebuild back then, and it's kind of sat there for a minute without it. So he's looking to come through, rebuild in a more flood resilient manner. So this variance request for 1,600 square feet of built upon area, same thing, conditions as stated earlier. This is about the proposed location. In the pre-submittal meeting, we discussed about maybe trying to move it forward, deal with the front setback some, but an issue with where the existing septic field kind of came into play. So one of the other issues was we kind of just shifted it a little more inward from the property line to give it a better situation as well. The total built upon area is less than what was there before, is one other reason why we kind of want to support this. This is the one kind of standard situation where if we're going to relax by 10% because we're going to put more than 10% of built upon area in the buffer, it also is going to require the state to approve it. Those are the standards, which we'll go through each item. So applicant's rebuilding due to the results of increased flooding in the area and wants to build his home back on piers. He will need to continue with his permit process to deal with the flood ordinance. That will be a separate process that he'll handle with the county through permitting. So this is just focusing just on the buffer impacts. Buffer was there after he built the house. So it's kind of like trying to rebuild what he has there. As mentioned, the septic field towards the front of the parcel kind of makes it a little difficult. Went over the top one, and then again, this is consistent with the area, a little different approach. The rest of the older variances reduce the buffer in its entirety. We would like to preserve that as best we can and just focus on the impact and then get some mitigation associated with it that we wouldn't have otherwise to kind of make that buffer a little better. With that, we support it with the condition that during permitting, an approved mitigation plan is followed and created, and that there's also the approval from the state level.
Okay.
What is the approved mitigation plan?
When it goes through, the approved mitigation will follow the level 1 or 2 impact guidelines. Typically involves plantings along the buffer area as a kind of like growth added in the area. It's not been decided yet. It'll be worked with through permitting process.
But it's going to be vegetation.
Vegetation.
Okay.
Yeah, we've handled similar ones when we've had buffer variances, and it's all generally geared towards vegetation, especially in these kind of areas.
Any other questions?
Thank you.
Okay, we'll go into deliberations and we'll talk about this. The requested variances for the buffer impacts are listed on your finding of facts and conclusions of law. And is it listed in here what that condition right there, staff supports with the condition of an approved mitigation? Is it in this?
I think that was the last bullet point in the finding of fact.
Madam Chair, you need to reopen for.
They got to reopen.
Oh, I'm sorry. I have to reopen this.
Sorry.
That's my fault. I didn't. Does anybody see it? That's that statement there,
It's on the back of the top of the second.
top of the second page here. Oh, the applicant will need to seek approval from the state for the buffer impacts. This variance would be contingent on that. That suffice? This is the. All right, thank you, sir. All right. Deliberations, guys, or comments? All right, do I have a motion to support this variance?
Court move to support the variance.
You must- Yes, sir. With the condition. Oh, yes, definitely with the condition.
Yes, amend my motion and add that with the conditions as recommended by staff.
Yeah, because I'd like to have that statement right there. It's a little bit different than number 16, so I'd like to have that. Approval of mitigation plan and approval from the state. Rather than just approval from the state for the buffer impacts. That's just a personal thing. Okay, do I hear a second? Oh,
Mr. Court,
Hold
do
on,
you
yeah, so,
accept that
yeah,
friendly amendment?
so, yes, so I would amend my motion and revise 16.
To say the staff supports this variance on the condition of an approved mitigation plan and approval from the state. If that suits everybody. Or we could just say with condition of an approved mitigation plan and approval from the state.
This variance, so we were amending it to say this variance would be contingent on, strike that. And add the condition of an approved mitigation plan and approval of the state.
Okay,
The condition, yeah, okay.
So second.
okay, just a second. Let me get this written down. Approved mitigation. Plan. And approval from the state. Oh, it's on the top. Okay, mitigation plan. Okay. Here. All right. Okay, Mr. Court has made a motion with the amendment to number 16. Ms. Sun has seconded. Mr. Williamson,
Williamson, yes.
Mr. Shea,
Shay, yes.
Mr. Court,
Court, yes.
Ms. Sun,
Yes.
and Dryden, yes. So the variance is approved with conditions. Thank you very much. Yes. All right, now we need to look at the finding of facts and conclusions of law. And we have amended number 16. To read, Mr. Court, can you read that? What the applicant will?
Number 16 was amended to say the applicant will need to seek approval from the state for the buffer impacts. This variance would be contingent on the conditions of an approved mitigation plan and approval from the state.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, do I hear a motion to approve the signing effects and conclusions of law as amended?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Court. Do I hear a second?
Williamson, second.
Thank you. Ms. Sun?
Yes.
Okay, Mr. Court,
Court, yes.
Mr. Shea,
Shay, yes.
Mr. Williamson,
Williamson, yes.
and Dryden, yes. So the finding of facts and conclusions of law are approved as amended. Okay, our next item on the recommended agenda is variance number 2025-00024 for property located at 427 South Church Street. All right,
All right, John Kinley, Planning Department. And this case is by Emmanuel Newman, represented by Sarah Beeson for property located at 427 South Church Street. As parcel owned by Tryon Property Owner LP and Cara Oak Tree Capital Management LP. They're seeking 6 variance requests to expand an existing parking structure. First request is to Article 38.8 to allow the expansion of a non-conforming structure. Article 12, Table 12-1 to reduce the frontage setback of 20 feet to 4.87 feet along Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard, which is a 15.83 foot reduction. Again, to Article 12, Table 12-1 to reduce the frontage setback of 16 feet to 11.5 feet along South Church Street, and which is a 4.52 reduction. And variance to Article 19.7B1 and 2 to allow the screening of for the proposed levels to match the existing screen walls. Variance to Article 20.7, 20.8, 20.17C, and 20.17D to waive the landscape area and internal and perimeter planting requirements. And then lastly, a variance to waive the EV parking requirements of Article 19.3. So this is the subject property in Uptown at the corner of South Tryon and West Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard. Currently developed with an office building and parking structure to the rear, indicated by the star there in the zoning map in Exhibit 3. You can see the existing office structure. And let me move this out of the way a little bit. And then the parking deck here in the back. It's zoned urban Uptown Core zoning district. Again, just a close-up aerial of the property. Here's a couple street view images on Exhibit 5 showing the existing parking structure. I think in the report I wrote that it was maybe 5 stories or 5 levels. Where is that at?
Number 4.
Thank you, Kevin. Yeah, number 4, let's say it's a 5-level parking structure. I think it's actually 4 levels of parking, and then ground floor shops and service facilities at the bottom floor that you see along the street, and then 4 levels of parking above. So again, 6 variance requests to different standards of the ordinance. Article 38.3 basically says that you can't expand a non-conforming structure. And it says that the expansion area would have to comply with the ordinance standards. Variance, and then Article 12 deals with setbacks along the street frontages. And again, along South Church and Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard, which is this corner here, there's some setback encroachments due to the placement of the existing building. And then the screening for an Article 19, the ordinance requires screening of parking vehicles and the parking structures. Basically, this existing deck has these short, I think they're 3 or 4 foot tall screen walls, probably 4 foot tall screen walls. And then the UDO requires additional architectural details in addition to screen walls as being one of the options of ways to screen parking decks. So like, think about like the panels that you see attached to the parking structures that are like artistic and that sort of thing, or different cutouts of metal and that sort of, those sorts of elements are ways to provide additional screening. So the variance request here is to allow them to use just what's on this existing deck already and not do those additional screening mechanisms. And
So
then
on the levels that they're wanting to increase, they would just use the same facade.
right, it would match this facade essentially.
And before you move from that picture, I'm just curious, what is the scaffolding, what is that?
This is actually around where the ramps are going up. So there's a ramp up here and then circle around the deck and you go up again and circle around and go up again, circle around and up to the top level. So this is just the barriers for the vehicles along those ramps. And that is here on this there's like an alley that goes between these buildings. And so that's facing the alleyway. And then waive the internal landscape area and internal perimeter tree planting requirements. The parking structure that's existing. So they're asking for that to be waived since they're not going to have any ground floor area to plant in, and then to plant internally, you'd have to use planters. And then they're asking for a variance to waive the EV parking requirements. Basically, you're required to have a certain number of EV parking spaces or spaces capable of providing EV charging in the future. And modifications would have to be made to the existing parking deck to get EV parking capable facilities up to those additional structures. So that's why they're seeking for the variance for that. And I'll go into a little bit more detail on these as I progress through the presentation. The existing building was built in 1974. I think, yeah, this is the office building here. It's a little bit skewed, but you can see Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard, South Church Street, and Tryon. This is the parking deck. So it's all built in 1964. This historical imagery is from 1978 on Exhibit 7, just showing that it's a legal non-conforming structure. It was built prior to even the legacy zoning ordinance. So based on that existing construction, you can see the indicating here the building setback lines or frontage setbacks in this blue kind of line that's outlined with the BSL. So the area in orange is the area of this existing structure that encroaches into the setbacks. And it's about 3,480 square feet of area that's encroaching. So this would be the layout of the new levels. Again, it's just going to be 2 additional levels above the existing parking structure. The idea or what they would like to do and the reason why they're seeking the variances is so that they can build the parking structure out to the full extent of the footprint of the parking structure below. So essentially repeating what's below 2 times. And so the perimeter of that building would be the same perimeter of the existing parking structure. So with the variance, that's what they would be constructing. Without the variance, they would have to push the structure of the additional levels back to this point here along Martin Luther King and this point here along South Church. And again, that's to meet the setback requirements, but also from a structural standpoint, the parking deck to be able to construct those additional levels, the walls of those or supporting elements of that additional structure would have to line up with the girders and structural elements of the parking deck below. So that's why they would be pushing it so far back along Martin Luther King. Unfortunately, what that then would do is mean that there's points for ingress and egress for pedestrians and emergency access stair towers that they would not be able to connect to. So it does create a bit of a safety concern. I think there's additional 3rd stair tower up here, which they might be able to connect to, but these two, they would not be able to have connections to from those additional levels. So from a safety standpoint, it's best that they can have multiple points of egress out from the additional parking levels. Here's some elevations showing this is the existing parking structures. Building elevations are kind of hard to see because they're hand drawn back in the 70s. But again, the proposed elevations would be just repeating essentially what's in the levels below and extending it up 2 levels. This goes into a little bit of detail about the structural elements. They did a structural analysis of the existing parking structure, and it was designed originally to support additional levels. So again, that's why we're seeking the variances to allow those additional levels to line up with the structural elements that are below. Essentially what it's noting on here is that the building would have to make modifications to the structural elements of the existing parking deck in order to meet the ordinance by setting this building these additional levels back. So even though that does help them a little bit in that there's structural elements that they could line up with, they still have to make some modifications to the building supports on these levels here to get that support to go all the way down to the ground. So again, exhibit numbers again. Exhibit 12, continuing the applicant's structural analysis. Again, significant structural modifications to the existing parking deck would be required in order for those new levels to meet the setback requirements. And the blue line is indicating the setback. And then this is the area where the parking structure would have to be placed in order to be supported structurally. So they would be having to set it back much farther, again, from what the ordinance would require, and they'd be missing out on the stairwell connections here and here. This is just another graphic showing in exhibit 13, the structural analysis. So the additional 5th and 6th levels of parking, again, would have to be smaller than what the existing footprint is if they had to meet the strict ordinance application for setbacks. And again, what they would like to do is match up the existing footprint so they can have connections to all the stair towers, match the facade of the structure below. But in order to do that, they would need all 6 of those variances that we
John, your
covered.
graphics are getting better and better. Very impressed.
The applicant actually provided those, so
Very
you
nice.
can take them. 37.8 A13 provides all 4 standards for granting a variance. And I'll give you a minute to look over the findings of fact if you want before I go through those items.
I'm gonna go over the
Fine.
EV variance specifically.
I think we just it's in the bullets under 6. So yeah, whenever I go through the findings, I can talk about that. I'll talk about that.
Okay, John, you may continue.
So unnecessary hardship would result from the strict application of the ordinance because the existing parking structure was built in 1974. That predates the UDO and the legacy zoning ordinance that went into effect in 1992. Article 38.3 of the UDO states that non-conforming structures can be expanded, but only if the expansion area of the lot at which the expansion is taking place is in conformance with the UDO. It would be an undue hardship to follow the strict application of the ordinance because the existing parking structure would have to be demolished in order to be compliant with the ordinance standards as a whole. And then like I stated before, the parking structure, additional levels would have to be set back if they were going to comply with the ordinance. As shown in the applicant's plans, the new levels need to align with the existing levels below, provide structural support, and to meet the ordinance frontage setback requirements along Martin Luther King Boulevard and South Church Street. Those 2 new levels. The parking deck would have to be set back from the perimeter of the existing parking deck And that creates a hardship because significant modifications to the existing deck would need to be provided to provide structural integrity to the structure. The existing parking structure is screened with screen walls, and the applicant has agreed to a condition that the new levels will match the screening of the existing parking structure. The applicant could meet the ordinance requirements for just the 2 new levels. However, the design would not match the remaining portion of the structure below, and the existing parking structure would have to be modified to meet the strict application of the ordinance. And then EV parking space requirements require specific electrical infrastructure to be installed, and alterations to the existing parking structure would be required to provide appropriate electrical service support to those EV spaces in the new levels of the parking structure.
Help me understand. Well, they just can't get the power?
It would be like think about having to run the conduits and everything all the way up through the building. So they would have to drill through each levels of the parking structure below to get that power up to the 2 new levels of the deck.
That doesn't seem impossible to me. I'm more concerned about the fact that the city has an overarching plan for a green plan for 2030, 2050, and this seems to go against that. And drilling holes to core drilling for concrete is not hard to do. It's not expensive. I mean, it's not that expensive. I'm just concerned that this goes against that. I'm just curious why this is not something you guys are more emphatic about.
Yeah. I think we were seeing this since the building was already existing, it doesn't meet the code requirements as it is. And this is just adding 2 additional levels that we didn't see there would be a huge benefit to those requiring that additional EV parking spaces for the amount of work that would have to be done.
Do they have EV parking on the lower spaces already?
I'm not sure if there is or not.
Are they here?
They are.
Yeah, I guess my question is, are they converting the office building to residential? And this is a part of that whole plan? And if there are no EV spaces in the existing structure, if they're changing it to residential, there's probably more demand for EV spaces than you would get. And what's the code? 20% of the spaces or something like that?
I'm not sure off the top of my head. I'm looking at Solomon, who's gonna look it up for us.
I know it's a percentage of which you're providing, and I think what happened was I'll be honest with you guys, when we looked at it, it was one of those things where we just said, hey, because like John mentioned, we already had an existing deck, and looking at all the changes, we just had felt it had to come in. It wasn't something that we're pushing. Normally, you're correct. Normally, we try not to get people out of EV charging, even if they're providing 1 or 2, just enough. But here, we looked at this one, we just felt it wasn't, at the time, since they're using the existing deck, it just wasn't worth us support. I mean, I won't say wasn't worth for us to push back on them. Also, it was worth, hey, they were doing everything else. We just felt it was easier to support the variance, and just since it was an existing structure.
Because there are there's nothing on the other 3 levels with EV parking because they weren't required to do it when they built the deck.
That's correct. Usually, typically, and we also probably felt that if the client wants to do it, it doesn't hurt. I'm pretty sure if their business model changes, they would go put them in.
But theoretically, you could add those EV spaces on the first level. You don't have to core drill all the way up. You can put them all on one level.
If they wanted to do that, we would accept that. I wouldn't make them say you got to put them on the new spaces.
Yeah.
Do you want to ask the applicant? Do I need to swear them in?
Yeah, let's let Jonathan
Yeah.
finish, and then I think we
Okay.
might not have that discussion.
Okay, go ahead, John.
Just be mindful, we'll just have to take this off the recommendation agenda since.
Okay, if we decide to do that.
Yeah.
Hardship results from conditions that are peculiar to the property. The existing parking structure was built in 1974 and it will remain. The proposal would add 2 new levels to the top of the existing parking structure, and the existing parking structure encroaches into the frontage setbacks along Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard by 15.83 feet and 4.54 feet along South Church Street. The existing parking structure utilizes screen walls, and the applicant has agreed to the condition that the new levels will match the screening utilized by the existing structure. No changes are proposed for the ground level of the existing parking structure, and the existing landscape areas and plantings that are around that would remain. There is not space to meet the landscape planting standards without modifying or demolishing the existing parking structure. And the existing parking structure does not have the electrical infrastructure to meet the EV parking spaces. And the proposed new levels are located at the top of that existing parking structure. Hardship. Good slide. The hardship does not result from actions that were taken by the applicant or the property owner, because the strict application of the ordinance and the existing parking structure on the lot are the hardships. The applicant is and current property owner did not own the property when the existing building and parking structure were constructed. And the requested variance is consistent with the spirit, purpose, and intent of the ordinance, and that's substantial. Public safety is secured and substantial justice is achieved. I cannot talk. The proposed additional levels of the parking deck will not extend past the existing parking structure. The expansion would extend the encroachments into the setbacks vertically and not horizontally, and would not alter the essential character of the area. And aligning the expansion to the footprint of the existing structure will promote public safety by providing access to all existing egress routes, such as elevators and stair towers. And the proposal makes use of the existing, there's a repeated word there in 13, existing twice. The proposal makes use of the existing parking deck and infrastructure, limiting construction and development impacts to the area. And that concludes our presentation. There's a photo of the sign at the property.
Madam Chair and board members, just as a reminder, this is on the recommendation agenda. So if any of the board members right now are wavering and whether they would feel comfortable approving this, then my recommendation would be to open it up so that the applicant has the opportunity to perhaps answer any questions and at least present what they would like to. But if everyone's good with it staying on the recommendation agenda, you can keep going.
The applicant can speak and still keep it on the recommendation list, correct?
No.
No, okay.
Have to move it to the
Variance.
to the variance, if you want to ask them questions. And I can do that if that's what you want to do.
How important is it to us about this EV stuff? If it's not important to the board, I think it's kind of important, but I think Solomon's completely correct that the market's going to drive demand, and if the owners get that demand, they're going to have to meet that demand. But
Yeah, I'm comfortable with the recommendation as it stands. I think that the purpose and intent is probably, it seems like the new construction, it's appropriate. I think there's a lot of precedent for, in the existing building code, the barriers to bringing everything up to current standards is can be prohibitive and discourage improvement of properties. So, I not holding them to the new construction standard, I don't think is a problem.
One follow-up, you guys asked about, it was 20%, and we would hit the 20% based on the new spaces being constructed. And then sometimes also another follow-up is kind of looking at, especially where it comes to electrical power here in Uptown, Duke Energy and those vaults, depending upon some of that stuff, that's another reason we also work with people, because again, Duke Energy may make them start moving stuff, and then that becomes cost prohibitive, especially when you already have existing streetscape, things like that, and now it's removal of trees, things that we just didn't want to kind of force on that applicant.
20, how many spaces are being added in those 2 floors?
It's a duplicate of the other floors.
There it is.
70, no, that's with 124 with
So,
the variance.
uh,
It'd be 72
3
cars.
days
without
service, probably.
Something like that,
Yeah,
typically.
I'm with you. Okay. I'm with Hamilton. I agree.
Mr. Williamson, you have thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I think the only limitation that I see is the intent of the regulation. But if y'all are okay with it, I'll go with it.
Yeah, I feel the same.
Ms. Sun?
I agree.
Okay. All right, so, with our discussions, then do I hear a motion to approve this variance?
Madam Chair, there's a condition that
Yeah,
was
I was gonna-
recommended.
Yes.
I'll make a motion to approve with number 4 being modified. Say the property is developed with an office building and 4-level parking structure.
Is that right? Or,
Yes, 4, and then typo in 13, remove
right,
the extra
you
existing.
can take out one of the existing words. Puzzle makes use of the existing parking deck. Take out the word existing. So, all right, I'm sorry, who made the motion?
I'll make a motion to approve with,
All right, Mr. Shea made a motion to approve with conditions. The conditions that,
so that's actually gonna be just a modification of the finding of facts, isn't it?
Yeah,
Sorry, I thought there was a screening condition that they maintain this.
The screening was agreed upon and the condition of the new levels will match the screening utilized by the existing structure. And the new levels, yeah, so that's in there twice, so yes, those are the ones, the existing conditions that are in finding of facts that they approved. Or said they would approve, that they would do. So, okay, so Mr. Shea made a motion to approve with, 2 modifications, number 4 and number 13, and with the condition that the city,
Wait, let me try.
okay,
Because I think the finding of facts would be separate, right? So I think
right,
I'm making a motion to approve
variance.
the variance with the condition that the screening matches the current building.
All right, do I hear a second?
Court second?
Ms. Sun? Mr. Court,
Court, yes.
Mr. Shea,
Say yes.
Mr. Williamson,
Williamson, yes.
Dryden, yes. So the variance is approved. With conditions, okay. All right, now, finding of facts and conclusions of law, we would make 2 changes to number 4 and to number 13. Which just basically, one was a typo and one was a level 4 instead of level 5. Okay, do I hear a motion to approve the finding of facts and conclusions of law?
Court moved to approve findings of fact and conclusions of law as corrected.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Court, do I hear a second?
Shay second.
Thank you. Mr. Williamson,
Williamson, yes.
Mr. Shea,
Shay yes.
Court,
Court, yes.
Ms. Sun, yes. Dryden, yes. So that variance is approved and the conclusions of law are approved as corrected. Thank you very much. We're now up to variance number 2025-00025 for property located at 8710 Bryant Farms Road.
Hello, Crystal
Hello,
Monsegur.
how are you today?
Hello. The variance is 2025-00025 for a landscape yard. The applicant is Israel Levin, represented by Nolan Gross for property located at 8710 Bryant Farms Road, owned by Ballantyne Jewish Center, Inc. The variance requests to the landscape yard requirements for N1A zoning in Article 20.9, Table 20-2 of the UDO to eliminate a 95 linear feet portion of the 25-foot wide Class B landscape yard along the western property line and reduce the width to 20 feet for a 27-foot long portion of the landscape yard along the northern property line. Here in Exhibit 1 shows the vicinity map. Bryan Farms Road is south of 485. The zoning is N1A Neighborhood 1 zoning district. Exhibit 3 shows an aerial map of the property. Here is a close-up. and a Google Street View on Exhibit 5. The variance request is to the landscape yard requirements for N1A zoning is to eliminate a 95 linear feet portion of the 25-foot wide Class B landscape yard along the western property line and reduce the width to 20 feet for a 27-foot long portion of the landscape yard along the northern property line. Staff supports the requested variance and the applicant has agreed to the following conditions. The variance, if approved, only applies to the existing encroachments. If they are removed, then the variance would no longer be valid. If the 6 feet tall brick wall within the 95-foot long variance area along the western property is removed, it will be replaced with a fence or wall meeting the ordinance screening standards. Here is an Exhibit 7 is the site plan. You can see there's a pool here. And the pool encroaches into the landscape yard. And then this is a pool building that encroaches into the landscape yard as well. Over here is a garage, and a portion of it goes into the northern landscape yard. And here's a close-up of that site plan. You can see that the pool, 1,530 square feet of the pool area is located inside the Class B landscape yard, right here. And then there is a pool house area, 141 square feet of the pool house area is located in the landscape yard. Here is that 1-story brick garage, and a portion of that goes into the landscape yard, Class B landscape yard. The existing pool building and detached garage is to remain and be used by the institutional use. There is a wall to remain as well. The pool and pool building was built in 1992. The detached garage built in 1997 per Mecklenburg County tax records. The pool and pool building is visible in 1993 aerial photo. Here is the variance criteria. If you'd like to take a moment to look over the findings of facts.
Help me understand why we're here. Are they taking down the building?
They are going from residential use to institutional use.
Okay.
And which is triggering the landscape yard.
So the existing building is going to get converted? Or is it, because the first diagram had a new parking area, I think. Yeah, is that's all new, correct?
So,
Those are two.
yeah, the house that's on, there's 2 properties here. The parcel that's subject to variance is the property with this house and pool. There's another house on another piece of property here that is where they're gonna be developing the primary part of the institutional use with the parking area. They don't need any variances for that. So the only part that they need a variance for is this area here that's going around this perimeter, this side of the property.
Understood, but I'm just trying to understand the change. That's the parking area is new then, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, this faded area, it's kind of hard to see on here, but this is the existing house on the
I see.
subject
I got
parcel,
you.
and then their driveway and the garage. All that is to remain and be just converted into institutional uses. But because of the overall development of the site, that's what triggers the landscape yard requirement.
I got you. So it's including 8632, the next door piece. Okay.
Then combining properties?
I don't know, but either way, they're allowed to do an institutional use on both properties, and the requirement is that that's being triggered is from the use perspective of the property itself. So as soon as that use changes from residential use to the institutional use, that's what triggers the landscape yard requirement. And they don't have the space to meet the landscape requirement where the pool and the garage are that are remaining on the property.
Got you. Thank you.
So basically, they're just asking us to help them come into compliance with
They can't come in.
Yeah,
and
it's-
Expired, so they're asking us to forgive because the structures were already existing
As a residential.
as residential. Right.
What? So there's no property lines, they show the original residential property, or it's just kind of shown as one big parcel? Are those like drainage areas or something?
I'm not really sure what the yellow lines are indicating on the site plan, to be honest.
Okay, you can continue.
Thank you. Unnecessary hardships results from the strict application of the ordinance. The ordinance allows institutional uses in the N1A zoning district. However, a landscape yard is required when abutting residential use. The installation of the required landscape yard would require the demolition and removal of the pool building, and garage. The purpose of the requested variance is only to allow the existing site structures described here in and depicted on the applicant's site plan to remain. The required 25-foot landscape yard will be installed in all other applicable locations. The hardship does result from conditions that are peculiar to the property. The site was developed with a single-family home, and the pool building, and garage meet the setback standards for accessory structures. According to the applicant's plan, the pool building, and garage will remain. The hardship does not result from actions taken by the applicant. The pool building, and garage were constructed by a previous property owner. The proposed use that triggers the landscape yard requirement is a permitted use in the district. According to Article 37(8)(a)(13) of the UDO, the act of purchasing property with knowledge that circumstances exist that may justify the granting of a variance shall not be regarded as a self-created hardship. The requested variance is consistent with the spirit, purpose, and intent of the ordinance in that the public safety is secured and substantial justice is achieved. The site abuts N1A zoning developed with single-family homes to the west and north, and abuts CG zoning to the east. A church is located across Bryan Farms Road. The site is located in an area developed with commercial and institutional uses and provides a transition of development intensity between larger institutional uses and commercial uses and single-family homes. According to the applicant's plans, the new building to be constructed on the site will be located on the eastern side of the site nearest to the CG zoning property and intersection with Elm Lane. Impacts of the redevelopment of the site will primarily be in the areas where the full required landscape yard will be installed. The required landscape yard will be installed for the majority of the northern and western property lines. The intent of the variance is to accommodate existing structures that would otherwise have to be removed if the variance were denied. And here in Exhibit 13 shows the sign posted on the property. If you have any questions.
Any questions? Staff?
I don't have any questions. The issue of the commercial and it being a transition zone, Bryant Farms Road, I'm not familiar with that road, but there's, you said there's commercial and, other uses on that road adjacent, and it will be a transition between the, institutional and neighborhood uses.
Yeah, there's a gas station to the right
Okay,
that you can't see there.
right.
No, just this.
Okay. Yeah, that overall would be good. Back out to the big neighborhood. Yeah, right there. Okay.
Yeah. And there's a church across the street, YMCA down the road.
Yeah, that's it.
So the conditions there, that if the pool or any of the structures are removed, then it falls back to the variance would be no longer valid, that they've agreed to that.
Yes,
And the brick wall, they're gonna leave?
correct.
Okay,
That if it were to get removed, that it would have to be replaced with a fence or wall meeting the ordinance standards.
okay. Any other questions or comments? Do I hear a motion to approve?
Court move to approve
Thank you, Mr. Court.
with the conditions as stated by the staff.
Shay second.
Mr. Shea, Mr. Williamson,
Williamson, yes.
Mr. Shea,
Shay, yes.
Mr. Court,
Court, yes.
Ms. Sun, Dryden, yes. So the variance is approved with the conditions. Okay, and the finding of facts and conclusions of law. As far as I can tell, they're good. Do I hear a motion to approve?
Court move to approve the
Thank-
findings of fact and conclusions of law.
Thank you, Mr. Court. Do I hear a second?
Shay second.
Thank you, Mr. Williamson,
Williamson, yes.
Shea, Mr. Shea,
Shay, yes.
Mr. Court,
Court, yes.
Ms. Sun, Dryden, yes. So the finding of facts and conclusions of law are approved. Thank you very much. All right, we will now hear, this is a variance request for the 2025-00021 for property located at 3800 Bonwood Drive. And we do have people here to speak in opposition. So when it comes time to do that, we will swear you in after the staff's presentation.
All right. This is variance, 2025-00021, variance request to Article 17.2 D2B to allow an 8-foot high fence in the established side setback from the required 6-foot height that the ordinance requires in that section. That's a 2-foot increase. The applicant is William Bundy, also the property owner at 3800 Bonwood Drive. This is Exhibit 1 vicinity map showing the approximate location of the property. Again, off of Bonwood, which is near South Wendover Road between Randolph and Providence Road. Exhibit 2 is the zoning of the property. Existing zoning is N1A, Neighborhood 1 zoning district. Exhibit 3 is an aerial map showing the location of the house. And the location of the fence we'll get into a little bit later, but the area we're talking about is this property line here, which is, we'll call it southeast property line. Exhibit 4 is the Google Street View. This is a little bit dated. I think they've made some renovations to the existing structure since this was taken. Again, a variance request Article 17.2 D2B to allow an 8-foot high fence in the established side setback from the required 6-foot height, which is a 2-foot increase. The ordinance requirement basically says that the following standards apply unless a different standard is required by the landscape standards in Article 20 for Neighborhood 1 zoning districts. A fence or wall that's located in the established front setback or setback along the frontage is limited to 5 feet in height. A fence or wall that's in the established side setback, which is between the established front setback and the established rear setback, is limited to a height of 6 foot. And then a fence or wall that's located in the established rear setback is limited to a maximum of 8 foot above grade. So again, we're talking about B, this is the portion of the fence that's in the side setback, which is the area between the front and rear setback. So here's a graphic, Exhibit 7, showing the site plan. but also illustrating the ordinance requirements. So the area in blue behind the house, here's the existing house footprint. So this black line, the ash black line represents the rear building line. So everything behind the rear building line would be the established rear setback where 8-foot tall fences are permitted. The established side setback is the area between the side wall of the house and the side property line. And again, the ordinance limits that portion of the fence to a height of 6 feet. And this is an 8-foot tall fence was installed up to this brick wall here. There's a brick wall that goes from the house out to the side property line. So basically a fence was erected from here to there that's 8-foot tall rather than 6-foot tall. And then the ordinance then allows fences in the established front setback, which is again in front of the front wall of the house, to be 5-foot tall. There's no fence there, but that just illustrates the ordinance requirements. Again, the portion of the fence we're talking about for the variance request is fence going from the established rear setback line up to the brick wall. And that's what was erected to be 8 feet. So here's some pictures from code enforcement. The reason for this variance request is that the applicant did install an 8-foot tall fence. Code enforcement came out, inspected it, and provided them with a notice of violation that, hey, the fence in the established side setback is supposed to be 6-foot tall. So you either need to resolve this code enforcement matter or you can try to seek a variance. So that's what the applicant is here for today, is to request that variance to allow that two additional feet in height in the side setback. 37.8A13 is the standards for granting a variance. All 4 of those have to be shown to be met in order for the variance to be granted. I'll give you a minute to look over the findings of fact and conclusion of the law before I move on to those bullet items.
So my understanding is that part of the fence has already been built.
Yeah,
Out of
the
compliance.
fence has already been built. So basically, if you go back, I go back to the site plan, there's an 8-foot tall fence goes around the back. So all that's fine, compliant. But then once you get past this, the rear building line, that should have, the height of the fence should have been dropped down to 6 feet, but instead they just continued that 8-foot fence all the way up to the brick wall.
Thank you. Okay, you may continue.
So, let's see. There we go. Unnecessary hardship would not result from the strict application of the ordinance. The applicant installed the fence taller than the ordinance requirements, and the cost associated with modifying the fence or replacing it with the compliant height cannot be the sole basis for granting a variance. Hardship doesn't result from conditions that are peculiar to the property. Because the property is along budding properties are zoned N1A and developed with single-family homes, it's common for properties to have varying topography and stormwater runoff to occur from one property to another. The applicant stated that the taller fence supported with a 6x6 post was installed to mitigate erosion and drainage risks from the property for the abutting property. And erosion and stormwater runoff issues can be addressed by methods other than fencing, such as grading and retaining walls and other stormwater facilities. The height of the fence would not have an impact on stormwater controls, and the applicant states that 6-foot fence would be supported by 4x4 posts. However, you could have a 6-foot tall fence supported by 6x6 posts. There's a curved tree that sits on the property, and the applicant has stated in their application that to provide security and screening, that an 8-foot tall fence cut to match the curve of the tree was installed. The fence could be constructed to go around the applicant's side of the tree to provide a continuous secure boundary rather than having the fence be breaking up that, the tree breaking up the fence and then having to cut the fence to match the curve of the tree. And the hardship does not or does result from actions that were taken by the applicant. The applicant hired a contractor to install the fence. Ordinance doesn't require, or the codes doesn't require you to get a permit to install a fence, but it is the responsibility of the property owner to ensure that the UDO standards would be met. And the requested variance is not consistent with the spirit and purpose and intent of the ordinance, and that public safety is secured and substantial justice is achieved. There are not conditions that are unique to the property that would demonstrate a hardship to allow the additional 2 feet in fence height, and other single-family properties are required to meet the ordinance standard. And here's a picture of the sign on the property. That concludes staff's presentation. And again, there are speakers here in favor and in opposition to this request.
Thank you. Any other questions for staff before we move on? All right, if the applicant is here, if you will step forward, please. Okay, I need to swear you in, sir. You'll step to the mic. All right, I need you to state your name and spell it for the court reporter, please.
Name is William Clint Bundy, Jr. William William Clint CLINT Bundy BUNDY.
Thank you. And do you solemnly swear or affirm that the evidence you shall give to the board and the action shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Bundy. You may continue.
Thank you all for your time. My name is Clint Bundy, owner of 3800 Bombwood Drive. Want to be efficient with your time this morning. A couple of things. First, I'll walk you through my presentation. Second, there's a separate document that I have provided to the staff to pass out to you all, which is a document that highlights some differences in this presentation versus what I submitted in my original variance application in early April. I'm going to walk through the presentation and those key highlights, but I wanted to make sure you had that separate document for your reference. If you don't mind, I'd like to just ask a question or two of the staff and follow up to their testimony. John, maybe I'll direct it to you if that's okay. When you all did your evaluation of, I guess this would be my pre-submission, did you factor in state of North Carolina residential codes as relates to swimming pools and hot tubs during that evaluation?
No, we only looked at the requirements of the zoning ordinance in Article 17 for fences.
Okay. And my other question is, did you evaluate the fence, the aluminum fence that sits on the 3808 Bombwood Drive property, and a potential hardship created by that aluminum fence as relates to my fence?
No, again, we only looked at the fence that was constructed on the property and based on the code enforcement citation that was issued.
Okay, thank you. Make sure I get my clicker here the right way. So agenda, again, I want to be very efficient with your time. Myself, Clint Bundy, I've got two experts here today who will be testifying on my behalf, who are specialists in the fencing and landscaping field. I want to thank again the board for your time. I want to thank the staff over the past few months for their assistance as I've gone through this process. Quite simply, I'll give you an overview of my purpose of the variance request. I'll go through the 4 criteria, and then I've got a few pages at the end for summary support before I then allow my 2 experts to testify on my behalf as well. Let me start with at a high level. The 8-foot fence that we've installed is not just for the benefit of our family, but for the neighbors and neighborhood, especially for the safety of the children in the neighborhood. So therefore, we respectfully request a variance for the existing fence that we have, as John mentioned earlier, which is an 8-foot side yard fence. To go through key highlights of what I'll walk through here in our presentation. The unique hardship results from an application of a 6-foot fence. There are peculiar conditions of the property at 3800 Bombwood Drive, including its proximity to a climbable fence located on the neighboring 3808 Bombwood Drive property. The Bundy family did not create the hardships, And the requested variance maintains the spirit, purpose, and intent of the UDO zoning regulations, including promoting public safety, which is especially, again, critical in a neighborhood with a high concentration of families. And I do want to note within this safety feature that this includes adherence to the residential pool requirements as stipulated by the North Carolina Residential Code and enforced by the Mecklenburg County Code Enforcement Division. I want to mention that our neighbors at 3808 Bonwood Drive, their request served as a key driver in our constructing an 8-foot fence that include putting a fence line, a new fence along the true property line as a line of demarcation or slightly on the Bundy property side. And secondly, they've consistently voiced their concerns over a long period of time about mitigating erosion and drainage concerns, i.e. because our lot sits at a higher elevation than their lot. So our efforts to address the above items include building the fence on the Bundy family property parallel to the actual property line, ensuring compliance with the North Carolina Residential Code when it relates to swimming pools and applicable Mecklenburg County Code enforcement requirements regarding residential pool construction and safety, and then doing our utmost to implement erosion control measures for benefit of our neighbor's property at 3808. I'll also add in beyond the fence for the erosion control, we also spent a lot of money to put a pump and drainage system in to take water out of our backyard and put it in our front yard to minimize any potential erosion issues down in our neighbor's yard in 3808. So let me jump into the criteria. Is criteria 1, and I'll try to again be as efficient as I can going through these. Unnecessary hardship will result from the application. We do have a curved tree, large curved tree that sits on the property line. And you see here at the, you see here on the pool code, I wanted to make sure that that's highlighted. State of North Carolina says that you cannot have a gap of more than 4 inches. The risk that we run, and these were as applied to me, referenced to me by my experts, because of the curvature of this tree and because where a 6-foot versus 8-foot fence could fall out, a 6-foot fence could result in a gap that goes beyond a 4-inch diameter shape. There was added risk there versus doing an 8-foot fence. We had the ability to match the boards and more seamlessly integrate the fence with the tree and avoid any sort of conflict with this regulation. And this was reviewed and approved by Mecklenburg County Code Enforcement when they did our pool inspection. Moving to the next slide, we have an aluminum fence that resides on our neighbor's lot at 3808 Bonwood Drive. A couple key comments here on pool code. First, the top of a fence to be compliant needs to be at least 48 inches high, which this fence is. But the second point here being is that the vertical members here cannot have a gap of less than 45 inches. Well, the distance between this gap and this gap on the horizontal railings are 36.5 inches, which makes this a non-compliant fence. So the punchline is the concern we have is that with a 6-foot fence, it would be very plausible, and this was as outlined to me by my pool company, my fencing company, and my landscaper, is that a child could step up onto this fence and grab, let's just say roughly a 6-foot fence would be right around there, grab the top of a 6-foot fence and propel themselves over into the pool area, which is a significant concern to us. So therefore, the 6-foot fence imposes a hardship and puts us in potential violation of these key, especially the second point. I do want to note too about the aluminum fence. This is a fence that's been in existence for over 20 years. We did not put the fence in. There was a portion of this fence that was on our yard. We took it out before and instead put this fence in construction. The current neighbors at 3808 Bonwood Drive were occupants of their house when this fence was put in. They have not elected to take this fence out, so we have to mitigate the risk, which is why we're requesting the variance for the 8-foot fence. Moving on to the next criteria, added risk from what we have is from a grade difference between our front yard, which you see here on your left, and our backyard, which is here on the right. So you see these steps, let's just call it roughly a 2-foot drop right there. So a 6-foot fence, two main challenges that are imposed upon us by utilizing a 6-foot fence. One is a 6-foot fence would drop below this pool compliant brick wall level. So the concern that we have is that a child could easily leverage this higher ground and this brick wall to swing a leg around and come down into the pool area off of a 6-foot fence, whereas they cannot do that with an 8-foot fence. Secondly, it doesn't provide, and I'll have some additional photo support later in the slide, if there's not a proper integration here at this point between the pillars and the fence, then it doesn't meet with neighborhood standards. Moving on down to the next point I wanted to make, referencing earlier my comments around erosion control. As advised me by my experts, the higher that I hired to help me on this project, the higher elevation at our lot at 3800 Bombwood Drive relative to 3808 Bombwood Drive, there is always a concern of erosion and drainage issues. A 6-foot, the unnecessary hardship applied by a 6-foot fence risks not providing appropriate stability and measures to counterbalance the slope and potential drainage issues. So therefore, we felt that an 8-foot fence, and as advised to me, an 8-foot fence with 6-foot by 6-foot posts provides superior stability and addresses the neighbor's concerns. And then finally, in terms of criteria 1, we wanted to address the unnecessary hardship imposed by the downward slope going from the top of our side yard down to the corner of our backyard. This, by utilizing a 6-foot fence, it doesn't allow us to have a consistent fence line, which meets with neighborhood standards of a consistent fence line from the front of the side yard to the back of the rear yard. So an 8-foot fence offsets those fence line issues. Criteria 2, conditions peculiar to the property, and these are somewhat of a reiteration of what I've already been through, so I'll be quick about this. But the curved tree, as I've mentioned earlier, is a peculiar condition on the property. We do have the issues with the gaps in the tree, utilizing the 6-foot fence and not adhering to pool code. The next one is the condition being the proximity to the neighboring fence, which is a non-compliant and climbable fence that compromises our pool area security. As you can see here at the opening, it's about just a little over 12-inch gap between their aluminum fence and our wood fence. And so this is this location is a peculiarity of our property. The grade difference between the front yards and backyards at 3800 Bombwood Drive is a peculiar condition. This issue, as I mentioned earlier, creates safety issues as relates to an individual or child being able to use the elevated ground to enter into the backyard over a lower fence line. And then finally, as I mentioned earlier, we have the peculiar condition of an elevated slope going from the top of the rear yard, side yard down to the back of the back of the backyard, coupled with the fact that we sit in an elevated position relative to the neighbors at 3808 Bombwood Drive, which could accelerate drainage and erosion issues. And now criteria 3, hardship not resulting from the actions by the Bundy family. We did not establish the property line that runs through the curved tree. Additionally, the inhabitants of 3808 requested that our new fence follow the property line or be on the Bombwood Drive property side slightly as a line of demarcation, further necessitating a fence that was sized appropriately to align with the tree. We did not create the elevated and lower ground separation between the front and the backyards for 3800 Bombwood Drive. The aluminum fence located approximately 12 inches from our wood fence doesn't comply with pool code standards, and creates a climbable access point. This was not created by the Bundy family, and yet it affects the neighborhood as well as our neighbors. The pool safety requirements that we are subject to as pool owners were not created by the Bundy family, and we are enforced by state and county authorities in accordance with public safety codes. And then we did not create the elevated topography relative to the 3808 Bonwood Drive lot, nor the downward sloping topography. And then finally, let me address point 4, the variance is, our view that the variance is consistent with the spirit, purpose, and intent of the UDO regulation. The side yard fence request aligns with City of Charlotte zoning ordinance by promoting public safety, adhering to the state of North Carolina and Mecklenburg County pool guidelines, maintaining neighborhood standards, and achieving substantial justice. As I've mentioned earlier, on enhancing public safety, we wanted to mitigate the risk tied to the brick wall and the curved tree and the non-compliance from pool code standards that could follow that. We wanted to mitigate the issues with the climbable fence that resides on our neighbor's lot of 3808 Bonwood Drive, so someone can climb up that fence and grab the top of a 6-foot fence and propel themselves over. And I do want to note that we did install the wood fence and in adherence with the pool safety regulations by the governing authorities, and we have been signed off on by Mecklenburg County Code Enforcement. They've come out and inspected our entire pool area. We are preserving the neighborhood aesthetics and standards. That includes providing a balance of privacy and openness without disrupting the visual harmony of the neighborhood. And then substantial justice is achieved or demonstrated as the known risks above are mitigated. The character of the neighborhood is not impacted, nor anyone's property use or rights, including the occupants of 3808 Bonwood Drive. And we view, we hope that you do too as well, a 2-foot side yard fence variance is fair and modest and remains visually appropriate in the lower side yard. Just some additional support before I let Bruce and Bryant come up. Wanted to just give a couple examples from the neighborhood. So this is from 3847 Bonwood Drive. You'll see proper integration of a brick wall pillar and a side yard fence that they have. This is also a house with a pool. This is just from a different angle. And then just as a point to note that the fence, which is not our fence, it's constructed by our neighbor on Chatsford Place, a very almost identical looking fence. So we're maintaining standards from an aesthetic standpoint with the side yard fence that we have constructed.
But those are not 8 feet tall.
I'm sorry?
They're not 8 feet tall, are they?
This fence right here, I believe is 8 feet. That is a backyard fence, not a side yard fence. What I'm pointing to in my on this, but what I am messaging here is that that our fence and their fence aesthetically have similar materials, have similar looks. So it's not that our fence sticks out like a sore thumb relative to other neighborhood structures from a material standpoint and construction standpoint. Just to point out, with our fence is constructed on the Bundy family property. You can see these stakes that demarcate the property line. So we have put it on our property. Full certification compliance with Mecklenburg County Code Enforcement. Survey from 2015, just for reference. For those who might be interested, resources for North Carolina pool codes and guidelines, which we are, as pool owners, have to adhere to. And then contact information for not only myself, but other service providers involved in this fence build project. So I'm not sure on protocol, but if I have 2 experts, if I can allow them to testify, if that's appropriate. Brian, Bruce, you'll bring them up at the same time? Okay, thank you. Brian, Bruce.
Yes.
Madam Chair, do you want to see if anyone has any questions for the applicant first before we move to other witnesses, either staff or from board members, just while his testimony is fresh?
Okay. Anybody have questions before we let the experts testify? All right, gentlemen, if you would, please, state your name and spell it for the court reporter, please.
Yeah, my name is Bryant Furr, BRYANT FURR.
Bruce Benfield, BRUCE, Benfield, BENFIELD.
Thank you, gentlemen. And do you solemnly swear or affirm that the evidence you shall give to the board in this action shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
All right, gentlemen. Okay, who's gonna speak first?
I'll speak first,
Okay,
yeah.
Mr.
Excuse
First.
me,
Yes.
Madam Chair, before they begin,
Okay,
Mr. Buddy, could you lay some foundation for the experience and skill of education of these witnesses that you're proposing to be experts in and the subject matter which they're going to testify?
Sure, I'll do a short intro for each of them, but I'm gonna let them elaborate if that's okay as well. Brian is with Champion Fencing. We hired Champion Fencing to do the fence work, provide advice to us on the fence work, throughout the process. So Brian's very familiar with the job. Brian, when you talk, I'll let you give a little more background about yourself.
Yeah.
And then Bruce is with Joyner Benfield, our landscaping firm. We hired Bruce to manage the overall project landscaping as well as coordinated work with Champion Fencing on that project. So they come as a tag team, and Bruce, when you can give more of a background about yourself as well.
And so they are experts on what exactly?
They are experts on fence line matters as relates to construction of fences, specifically my house, but also a lot of experience in the city of Charlotte and on guidelines as relates to fences and pool code guidelines as relates to fences.
Okay, and it would be great if you could tell us your background experience.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. Again, my name is Bryant, with Champion Fence. I've been with the company for 20 years now. Had a lot of experience on pools and pool codes, and things of that nature, and property lines and things of that nature. So really, he put it very greatly about the pool code. So when we build our fence, it's all about safety of the kids. We have to adhere to spacing, vertical, spacing of the 2x4s or our aluminum fence when we install them. In this case, they wanted to erect a fence, but we noticed that the fence that was currently there, the aluminum fence of the neighbors, did not meet pool code. And with that, what I mean is it's 4 foot tall, which is 48 inches that does meet pool code, but the two horizontal bars are below the 45-inch threshold, which creates a climb. So in code interpretation, anything that creates a climb, the pool fence needs to be 4 feet above it. So if we just built a 6 foot tall fence right next to that 4 foot tall fence, which it doesn't meet pool code, then they could just jump right over a 6 foot tall fence. Therefore, we build an 8 foot, which is 4 foot above that non-pool fence. That makes sense.
That-
Bill, Mr. Buddy's fence?
Yes, ma'am.
And I understand that you're offering yourself as an expert on the pool code.
Mhm.
Did you also check the Unified Development Ordinance with respect to the city's requirements for fences?
I did not, to be honest with you. When I came into it from a previous supervisor, so I came into it. It would already quoted 8 foot and all, and the pool. My concern at that time was make sure our fence met the pool code because of kids. That was my main focus. I didn't think about I do know all of that. I just wasn't, like I said, my concern was making this fence pool code so that children or anybody else would not be able to, jump into it easily. That was my concern. So yes. You're welcome.
I'm sorry, I don't understand. You're an expert, but you didn't know that the 6 foot is a limitation?
No, I did know that.
You did know that?
I did. Yes,
But you
sir.
violated it voluntarily? Because of safety reasons.
Well, yeah, I guess you could say that, but I wasn't thinking along those lines at the time I built the 8 foot tall fence. My thought process was going right to pool code. So I was building the fence to meet the pool code.
So pool code, what you quoted was the pool code has some kind of requirement that if there's a climbable structure next to a pool fence, you must be 4 foot
Yes, sir.
tall. Is that correct, John?
We don't enforce the North Carolina building code standards, so we only enforce the zoning ordinance. So I'm not an expert on the pool code.
Does the UDO supersede that?
If the UDO is requiring something stricter than what the state limitations would require, then the UDO would apply, but I think there's probably ways that compliance to both could be achieved in this case.
Not sure that answered my question.
My point is that the fence doesn't have to be located directly abutting the aluminum fence that's climbable. There could be an offset.
So, and also to follow up, I think Mr. Shea, both codes have to be applied to. So think about it kind of like, let's take it for like building height. The building code may say something, the ordinance says something, both are legal. You have to meet both of them. It's not a one or one trumps one. You have to meet both of them. And so obviously what would happen is we would, as part of that discussion, kind of explain it like before it happened, like before we're in this case, it would be, hey, we would have this discussion and then like we would be able to go follow up with building code to say, hey, what happened here? How do we meet your clients and still meet their needs? And we would figure that out.
Got it.
Okay, anything else, Mr. Burke?
I think that's about it. Just like Mr. Bundy had mentioned, all of the points that he made was exactly from pool code, and the safety of kids for the pool.
How far away would the metal fence on the neighbor's property have to be from a 6-foot fence?
So this is a black and white gray, kind of a gray area with the pool inspector. It's all interpretation, but how we read it is if their fence doesn't meet the pool code, if you erect a fence, it needs to be 4 feet away because a 4 foot is a minimum height, kind of lay it down, there would be but that's not a code. That's just it's very gray. So, yeah.
When I read I'm a general contractor, and when I read the code of North Carolina pool code, it says it just need to be a minimum height of 48 inches. So 4 feet, but I didn't recall any step up addition to that 4 feet.
Yes,
Am I
yes, ma'am.
mistaken?
Yeah. So the pool code reads that a 48 inch is the minimum height for North Carolina. So if you do an aluminum fence or any kind of fence, the railing, 2x4s or the railing of the aluminum has to be 48 inches. Where you get in trouble is if you do just a 48-inch fence, then with the neighbor's fence, you got a top rail, and then 7 inches down, you have another rail, and then you have a bottom rail. Well, that 2 middle rails are less than 45 inches, which creates the climb. So it has to be a minimum of 48 inches.
Yeah, a minimum of 48 inches, but I don't recall that you have to add step on top of steps. So it only needs a 4 inches and 2-inch clearance at the bottom, but I don't recall because the neighbors is in violation, you have to add another 4.
Yeah, it's
Is that an interpretation or?
that's
correct?
exactly what that is. And from my 20 years experience, they do not like that. They want it 4 foot tall, like in community pools and stuff. We really had to, like right next to a little water seal on the window. In that section, we had to build a 7 foot tall fence because to meet the 4 foot tall. So that's kind of interpreted by the code enforcement. That's how we go by. That's what we go by.
So the code enforcement required the 8 foot based on what you were saying?
We just did it by our experience. We know that's something that they're gonna look at. So we just decided we wanted to go ahead and kind of nip that in the bud, if you will. Again, we knew that fence wasn't pool compliant, the neighbor's fence. So that's why we did that.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Burke. We appreciate it.
Welcome. Yep.
All right.
My name is Bruce Benfield. I've been doing landscaping in Charlotte for 44 years. Company, my business partner, I've had this company for 21 years. Anything else you want to know about me or? We did, as far as the landscaping goes, we landscape to the hardscape. It's hard to make that, to have a 6-foot fence there. We did, install large drainage system throughout the yard and the side and the back to eliminate erosion for not just the neighbor next door, but also the people in the back that normally runs down to a small creek. We eliminated all that with a large pump system in the back. And there's also drainage under the turf on the side yard. Any other questions about any of
Well,
the?
how did, I understand all that mitigation that you did, but how does that affect the height of the fence? Could your mitigation have happened with a 6-foot fence as opposed to an 8-foot fence?
Well, it all goes back, I think, to this fence here. As far as the landscape part of it, we couldn't build up anymore, especially in the corner where he was talking about the brick wall, where the 8-foot fence and all that comes together. There's also a small brick wall on the front yard border that brings that up, which would easily, like he said, if you drop that down to a 6-foot board or a fence, it's easy for somebody to climb on that little brick wall over there. Right here, which is already there for them to climb over that. There, you couldn't move building up to this here because of this tree and the other trees there.
How tall is the white brick wall?
It's probably 6, I think it's what, 6 feet from that brick wall up to the top of pillars, probably might not even be 5 feet tall.
Just a little bit above
Yeah.
48-inch.
Yeah, probably just a little
requirement.
bit over that, yeah.
And did y'all build that wall?
No, it was already there. Yeah. So that's why that's why the steps are here, because this all up here is flush to the ground, and that pillar up there, like I said, it's probably about 5 feet tall, maybe. Because when you come out and you go down these 2 steps, which makes that a lot smaller down here. It looks like your 6-foot fence would come well below that pillar, where somebody really could step on a brick wall and go over. And there you're talking about kids, young teenagers that can do that kind of stuff.
Any other questions for Mr. Enfield?
And so, I was looking at a picture on Google Earth, and it looks like there's a different wall there on this picture. So when was the white wall built?
It was already there. It was already there. The pool people took that down to get into the backyard to build a pool. So that wall was already there. They just had to put it back together.
Okay.
That was access to getting in and out of the backyard for the pool
Okay.
and the landscaping.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, may I ask staff if they could actually pull up the Google Earth images so that all the board members have the benefit of that information as well, and also the applicant and staff.
Yes. Yeah, that's street view. Yeah, street view. So, yeah, zoomed in on I assume that white wall is on the left side right there?
It was a brick wall that hung.
That's a
See,
brick
since then, the house has been remodeled and all that's been painted. So the brick wall's been painted too.
Okay, got you.
That, I mean, you probably can't even see it from there.
So that looks like a wrought iron fence right there or something, or is that, oh, that's the gate. Gotcha.
Yeah, cause really mostly all that wall was covered up with like ivy and vines and stuff.
Mhm. See the grade change.
Any other questions or comments for Mr. Fur, Mr. Benfield, or Mr. Bundy? I have a question, since we don't have the pool code, and like we said before, the city's not responsible for the pool code. I just want to understand, does the pool code require that fences be a certain height?
Can I pull back up my presentation? Because I did have pool code regulation quoted. So I can point back to that. Wrong way, excuse me. So specific to your question about height. So these two top bullets here, first, the pool barrier should be at least 48 inches above the grade measured on the side of the barrier. So because this is aluminum fence, it's an open face, so it's both sides. It's not like our wood fence where we have it's a 48 inches is to answer the punchline. You gotta have a 48 inch, minimum 48 inches, minimum 48, and Brian can correct me if I'm.
That's correct.
And then as we were saying earlier, within that, if you're gonna have barriers, horizontal railings, they can't be of a gap less than 45
You can
inches.
use that little.
Yeah.
So in essence, with the pool code, with that 45 inches, this rail and that rail can't be any less than 45 inches. And right now, because that's a 48-inch tall fence, that railing and that railing is 36 inches. So that's your climb to get over a 6-foot tall fence.
With respect to your fence, is there a height minimum or maximum with respect to your fence, not the neighbor's fence?
We have to be at 48 as a
Minimum height's 48, yes,
And
ma'am.
there's no height maximum or in other
Only
words,
with the code stuff, the location of your fence, correct?
So if that fence if that metal fence was not there, you would have built a 6-foot fence?
But that, just to clarify, that wouldn't have solved our other hardships like the brick wall where. Give it a brick wall.
There you go, I'm sorry.
So you get into 6 feet, then you still got the issue here. That's Bruce was saying earlier, and I was saying earlier, someone could easily use the elevated position of the brick wall to slide across over into the backyard using the lower fence, lower elevation. So even if they remove the aluminum fence, that only solves one of really 4 hardships that we've outlined here.
Going back one image, you've got the wood fence there. I guess those 2 horizontal members in the wood fence are 46 inches apart there.
No, those two top. I can't see it at the very, very top. So what we did was we put this bottom one and this one at 48 to meet pool code. And then for structure stability, we had to put those 2 right there to help structure that big gap
But
with the pickets.
barrier is composed of horizontal and vertical members. The distance between the tops of those 2 members is
Mhm.
greater than 45 inches.
Yeah, this one and that one is,
Right, so that
Correct.
people can't climb it.
Correct.
Can't use it as a ladder.
you got it. Yes, sir.
So that's the explicit requirement in the code that talks about horizontal members, but the interpretation that's being used by the builders is that if there's something close enough nearby, it's a similar issue.
With the code, with the pool inspector, correct?
Right.
But just to reinforce, Mecklenburg County Code Enforcement did look at the fence, did look at our entire self and inspected and signed off.
Any other questions or comments for the applicant or his speakers? All right, thank you, gentlemen. All right, we have someone in opposition. Step forward, please. Okay. All right, if you would please state your name and spell it for the court reporter, please. State your name, please, and spell it for the court reporter.
Martha Shelley, MarthaShelley.
Marty Shelley, MartyShelley.
Okay, and Miss, may I ask, where do you live in proximity to this? Oh, yeah, we'll swear him in. I'm ready. Okay, sorry. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the evidence you shall give to the board in this action shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes.
Ma'am.
Thank you very much. Okay, all right, you may continue.
I'll show you. So this rolling button, you can, you go up and down with it. And then there it is. If here you can. You push to go to the next slide. Can you just push this? This, okay, great. To the zoning board. My name is Martha Shelley and I live at 3808 Bonwood Drive, directly adjacent to the property, requesting the variant for an 8-foot fence. My husband and I have lived in our home for over 24 years. I'm here today to express our strong opposition to this request. Please excuse if my husband needs to leave early today. We have a prior commitment this week for our son's college graduation, and we understand the hearing could not be rescheduled and appreciate the opportunity to speak. Our two homes are situated quite close together, with only about 20 feet between our structures on either side of the property line. Unlike most homes on Bonwood Drive, which have driveways between them, the close proximity makes any structure between our homes, especially one as tall as 8 feet, feel overwhelming and intrusive. Additionally, our house sits on the lower side of the slope, while 3800 property is elevated higher, making the already tall fence feel even more imposing from our perspective, amplifying its visual and emotional impact. I'd like to note the damaged black fence was originally installed by a previous owner of the 3800 property, but it was placed over the property line, encroaching onto our property at 3808. We were not made aware of this encroachment until it was brought to our attention in June of 2024. I'd also like to note, I don't have it on there, but we have documents and communication asking the owners of 3800 to remove their existing fence and put their new fence on their property line, on their property. In June 2024, the Bundys expanded their construction project to include a pool. They cleared their lot, mature trees, and had the property professionally surveyed. The survey revealed that their existing fence between our properties had been installed mostly on our land by a prior owner of the Bundy's property and encroached 3.5 feet onto our property. As a result, the Bundys requested that we grant them an easement to rebuild their new fence in the same location, including the portion that lies on our property. After talking with several real estate professionals, we kindly and respectfully declined the request. We explained that signing away such a significant portion of our land was not in our best interest as property owners, and that their new fence would need to be placed on their side of the property line. A month later, on July 3rd, A month later, on July 3rd, 2024, we received a letter by email from their attorney stating that if we did not sign their encroachment agreement, the Bundys would, quote, no choice but to initiate formal litigation, and that such legal action would be expensive and time-consuming for all, end of quote. We were shocked and very upset, as nothing like this has ever happened to us before. The idea of possibly being sued by a next-door neighbor over our own property was both overwhelming and incredibly disheartening. At our expense, we hired a real estate attorney to review the situation. After thorough research, our attorney advised us that the owner of the 3800 property, the Bundys, do not have legal grounds under North Carolina law to claim adverse possession or a prescriptive easement. Based on this legal guidance, we chose not to sign the encroachment agreement. Although the Bundys initially threatened litigation, they ultimately did not pursue legal action. Since then, the Bundys have installed a fence between our properties that is 8 feet high and approximately 100 feet long, even though the current zoning ordinance allows only 6 feet in height without a variance, a 2 feet and 33% height increase. The fence is offensive in appearance, a solid wall of unfinished wood with the rough side deliberately facing our property and the public. In contrast, when the Bundys installed a fence on the opposite side of their property, they chose a style that matched the character of the neighborhood and closely resembled what had existed on our side before their construction project. Additionally, at the rear of their property, they installed the same type of solid wood fence, but chose to install it at 7 feet high, even though the ordinance allowed up to 8 feet in that area. They also took the consideration step of facing the finished side outward with the unfinished side towards their own yard, an approach that is both customary and considerate. However, for the much longer fence between our homes, they installed an 8-foot fence exceeding the height limit and faced the unfinished side towards our property and the public. This choice feels deliberate and spiteful. It's also important to note that there are no other 8-foot fences between houses on Bondwood Drive. This proposed fence would be completely out of character with the neighborhood and set a troubling precedent that could erode the cohesive, open character of our community. Given all of this, we are concerned that this variance request is not rooted in legitimate hardship and does not meet any of the 4 requirements, but may instead be a part of ongoing personal dispute. The zoning ordinance already allows for a reasonable 6-foot fence, which provides sufficient privacy without negatively impacting neighbors. The variance request for overheight fence installed by applicant at 3800 Bondwood Drive. We have reviewed the Bundy's application for a variance and opposed the request. It is our understanding that the Bundys must meet all 4 required criteria for approval, and we believe they have not met any of them. We will address in each requirement separately. There is no justable basis for a height variance. The fence could have been constructed to meet the 6-foot code requirement, just as the code stands today. The decision to build an 8-foot fence was entirely the Bundy's choice. We did not request the fence to be placed on the property line, only that it be installed on the Bundy's own property. A, unnecessarily hardship would result from the strict application of ordinance. There is no need for an 8-foot fence in this situation. There had been a 4-foot fence for 20 years with no issues. The Bundys could have installed a fence style like what other Bondwood neighbors have installed around their pools, designs that are more in keeping with the neighborhood and like what they installed on other sides of their lot. The hardship results from the conditions that are peculiar to properties such as location, size, and topography. There are no conditions for the property that would prevent a 6-foot fence from being erected due to site and topography. Erecting an 8-foot fence serves no reasonable structural issues versus a 6-foot fence. Any drainage issues should be addressed through proper grading and landscaping and not by adding height to the fence. C, the hardship did not result from the actions taken by the applicant or the property owner. Purchasing a property with known elevation changes, mature trees, and code requirements places the responsibility on the owner to comply with existing zoning ordinances. We did not specifically request the new fence to be on the property line, and the Bundys could have built a fence around the tree sitting on their property. D, the requested variance is consistent with the spirit, purpose, and intent of the zoning ordinance, such that public safety is secured, sustainable justice is achieved. Zoning ordinance are to ensure consistent standards, preserve neighborhood character, and to prevent deviations, not to accommodate individual design preferences. The public safety and privacy concerns cited by the applicant can be addressed within existing code. We do not believe the conditions for approval have been met and oppose approval of a variance. And finally, if the applicant had requested the variance before building their fence, much of this could have been avoided. It would have allowed for proper review and neighbor input. We respectfully urge the board to deny this variance request. A 6-foot fence, as currently permitted by ordinance, offers sufficient privacy without adversely impacting neighbors. We do not believe that the Bundys have met any of the 4 requirements for the variance to be approved. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Comments?
I just want to make a comment, in the prior presentation, there was a lot of discussion about that, the old fence, and we were under the impression it was their fence and we could not remove it. We asked them twice over a 6-month period to remove that fence and they did not.
Thank you. Questions from Mr. and Mrs. Shelley? All right, thank you very much for your presentation. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, any additional questions from staff before we go into deliberations?
There, any rebuttal? You want to say that, rebuttal?
Oh, is there any rebuttal? Would you gentlemen like to rebut anything that the Bundys have said?
Bundys have said.
I'm sorry, that the Shelleys have said, Mr. Bundy?
Yeah, I disagree with his.
Step up to the
I'm
microphone.
sorry.
Sorry, what do you mean, put your presentation back up?
Thank you, Mr. Kimmel.
Yeah, just the comment about the aluminum fence, which was, again, I reiterate, it was not constructed by us. It was constructed 20 years ago by other homeowners of ours. We alerted them to the fact that it was their aluminum fence when we realized it was. Ultimately, we asked them to take it down on their side. We took down the side on our side. We did our part. They declined doing it on their side. So I just want to be clear that there was a lot of discussion had between them and us on that front. And ultimately, what was on our property, we took responsibility for to remove. It was on them to take down what was on their property. They've elected not to. So that's my only rebuttal I'd like to add.
Anything else? Anybody else need to speak or have something to say before we talk about this? All right, thank you very much.
One quick clarification. I know we were talking about Mecklenburg County Building Code. Obviously, when you read the regulation that was put up, our 6-foot requirement complies with Mecklenburg, because when they're saying it has to be a minimum of 48. So if we're saying on the side yard 6 feet, obviously the issue it appears has come up is this fence that we would not have known about. And it seems that there may be a disagreement between two property owners of whose responsibility is for that fence. So right now, just to answer the question, because it doesn't appear our standards conflict with Mecklenburg counties.
And the other thing I would clarify too is that the code inspectors who inspect the pool area aren't responsible for zoning inspections, so they would not have been responsible for checking the height of the fence to make sure that it complies with the UDO standard. Hence why code enforcement, who does inspect for zoning, are the ones who issued the notice of violation.
We're gonna go into the deliberations. Oh, let's make some comments or
Well, first, you go first.
Me? The code is a code, and no matter how you package it, 6 foot is the maximum.
thank you.
Yeah, I kind of take issue with the concern for the ladder issue taking precedent over all of this. I think that the direction of the fence is a choice, and it's an easily reversible choice, and it was made on other portions of the property. The intent of the pool code is pretty clear in that they want to avoid a ladder, and all these horizontals need to be spaced greater than 45 inches. If that were the superseding consideration, the horizontals would not be facing the stepping side of the fence. And then there's also a horizontal that creates a better ladder to climb this whole fence if you utilize the fence and all the horizontals on the fence that they built there. So I don't know that I don't know that I feel like the arguments on the climbability taking precedence are necessarily all the considerations were not taken in. There are things that were not taken into consideration that make this even more hazardous than otherwise.
I say by definition, this board sees gray area cases most of the time.
Yes.
This is not one of those times. This is very black and white. The code is 6 feet for a reason, not to offend the neighbors, not to be overwhelming, not to be out of character. To me, this is very black and white. I see the erosion argument, what Hamilton just raised, all those issues, that they just don't carry any water, no pun intended. I just think it's very black and white.
I agree with Mr. Shea.
I listened intently to Mr. Farr and his concerns about pool codes, and I agree with Mr. Court. Looking at the pictures of the fence, if you go back to that picture, and you built you built the fence with the slats. And it looks much easier to climb with the metal fence there with the slats facing the metal fence. So I have some concerns about the argument that you had to make it 8 feet so they couldn't climb over, yet you put slats there that would allow them, if they were very agile, to pull themselves up and over. I understand the aesthetics of it. You're putting a 6-foot fence into higher grade and it's not gonna match. But I can't say that that's a good enough reason to allow this variance. Aesthetics are not our concern, the code is. And the code is 6 foot. And it is the responsibility of the homeowner and the pool people and the landscape people, if you're gonna put up a fence, you need to know what the code is. I appreciate everybody's comments. Those are my thoughts as we move forward.
Thank you. And Madam Chair, just for purposes of the record and fully developing the record in this case.
Yes.
If the board could address each factor.
Okay.
And on your, I'm not sure if you still have
Yes, we do.
the,
Yeah.
yeah, I would maybe reference your, whatever we are
Yes,
calling
hardship,
this,
the
this
variance.
template rather than the conclusions of laws. This one's a little bit, fuller.
Right. All right, so it says unnecessary hardship would result from the strict application of the regulation. From what I hear from the board, we do not feel like that this would be an unnecessary hardship because it was brought on by the homeowner. They built the fence. And then zoning came out and said, or code enforcement and said, or zoning, you can't do this. And we can't say that in absence of the variance, no reasonable use can be made of the property. That's not true. They can just they need to put in a 6-foot fence. Or what about number 2? The hardship results from conditions that are peculiar to the property. Anybody have a comment?
It does have some topographical challenges, but that's irrelevant to the size of the fence.
Okay, I would agree with that.
And sorry, and then,
Yes.
the requirement in the statute actually gives a little additional information that also says hardships that result from personal circumstances or conditions common to the neighborhood or the general public may not be the basis for granting the variance. So I
Right.
just wanted the board to have the full
Right, so
standard
and
there.
that's what we're saying, that there are some topographical challenges, but we can't base our granting the variance just on because the grade is different. Or that's what I was talking about the aesthetics. That we can't base this on, well, it doesn't look very nice to put a wood fence up against a brick fence when there's the disparity in height. But that's not something that I, as a board member, feel like I can say, oh yeah, well, that's reasonable. It's not, I mean, it's not reasonable to me. So I think we're clear there. The hardship did not result from actions taken by the applicant. That is not true. The hardship resulted directly from what the applicant did by building the fence. And the requested variance is consistent with the spirit, purpose, and intent of the regulation. I don't believe it is because the regulation says a 6-foot tall fence. And so is that sufficient?
Yeah.
Yes. Any other comments of the support?
I would just add that I think that the conditions, I don't think that there are conditions that are peculiar to the property that are unique in the neighborhood. I think that these conditions are common in the neighborhood. And so I think that that's one that I feel like you may not have touched on specifically. There's lots of topography in the neighborhood.
Any other comments or clarifications to our applicable standards for variances.
Thanks, council's okay. I'd make a motion to deny this variance.
Okay,
Second. Williamson.
let's see, Mr. Shea and Mr. Williamson. All right, we have a motion on the floor to deny the variance. Ms. Sun,
Motion, Sun, yes.
Sun, yes to deny. Mr. Court,
Court, yes.
yes to deny.
Yes, correct.
Mr. Shea,
Say yes to deny.
thank you. Mr. Williamson
Gibson, yes to deny.
and Dryden, yes to deny. So the variance has been denied. Mr. Bundy, you will get together with code enforcement and zoning, our team and figure out what you need to do to make this right. All right, looking at the conclusions of law.
I'd like to make one change to 18.
Okay,
The grammar king I would like to change 18 to read, conditions are not unique to the property to demonstrate hardship. Demonstrate a hardship exists, I'm sorry. Conditions are not unique to the property to demonstrate a hardship exists.
demonstrate
Okay,
a
teacher.
hardship. Yes,
Yes,
Good.
ma'am.
very good. All right. So number 18 will be amended to read, conditions are not unique to the property
To
to
demonstrate.
demonstrate a hardship exists.
Council okay with that?
Okay, that's amended. Thank you, sir. All right, do I hear a motion then to approve the finding of facts and conclusions of law as amended?
Williamson, motion to approve the findings and facts as amended.
Thank
Say
you.
second.
Thank you, Mr. Shea. Ms. Sun? Mr. Court?
Court, yes.
Mr. Shea?
Say yes.
Mr. Williamson?
Williamson, yes.
Dryden, yes. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for your presentations. Okay, board, we need to we have two decisions on the finding of facts and conclusions of law for case 2025-00002 and 00013 from last meeting that we are going to have to look at so that we can approve them. And I believe, Mr. Davis, you'll step up, please, and just join the board because you were here for those decisions. No, you can just sit there or, okay, all right, thank you. Two different ones, so. Thank you.
This is the one that.
Okay, which, this is
Seek.
the 13, this is the 13. Okay.
This is written by Mr. Murray, right?
Oh, I see. This is written by Mr. Murray. Okay, this is what we asked him to do. And staff, you are looking at these two to see if they meet. Okay. All right, let's look at these.
Second one's Chick-fil-A.
From there are two of them.
Because we're two
Wait.
cases.
Yeah.
No, I got two. Oh, I got. Two pages. Okay,
It'd be just these, it'd be 3 pages, right?
just 3 pages.
You don't have a letter.
Because the letterhead goes with with 17.
So they're the same.
No, look, this one is the letterhead one.
Yeah.
And then this page goes with it.
Here, up to number 35C.
Yeah. 35, 17.
Okay, got it.
And then this single page is the one we're talking about now.
Thank you.
This is Mr. Murray's.
Stapler wouldn't kill you.
Hey, there's no budget for that.
There's no budget for those two set staples. Oh, okay. Oh, shit.
Just
Okay.
want to bring your attention to, for, case 13, number 18, they, mentioned the exhibit that we looked at. If y'all remember at the last month's meeting, we had the exhibit of the showing where the landscape yard was, had parking and driveway area. And they modified that exhibit to show what portion of the buffer would, be allowed to remain as it is, and then what portion would
Oh,
have
yeah.
to be, the parking would have to be removed. So, yeah, I think that's it right there. So that's.
Right.
This is that exhibit that's referenced, and we'll make sure that in our files, it's all attached to one another, but just want to bring y'all's attention to that item that's referenced in this, findings, facts, and conclusion law.
Okay.
That exhibit.
Okay.
Can you spin that?
Rotate it.
Oh, yeah, I remember. That was the part of the parking lot.
That's not. Read too long. We gave him a line there.
Let's see.
I think you're saying that diagonal line is where it starts, like there up.
Yeah,
Put in the landscape and then.
So-
Access to that egress over there.
Right.
All that, and that's actually, the work is, David Murray confirmed with me that that work has already been done to remove the pavement
Right.
in this location. So they're maintaining the driveway again.
Right.
That's getting, and then this will stay. That's what the variance was approved. that you
So where's the
all-
line, John? Is it just right
It's
there?
this line, it's right here.
Yeah, it was that.
It's hard to
little-
see, but.
The triangle that we talked about or whatever, so they could maintain the driveway.
It has to go at that angle because if it came down this way, it would block off the driveway.
Right.
I think that was a good compromise.
I think so. I agree. But you will include the exhibits in your final paper.
Yeah,
Okay.
and then we'll make sure that's part of what, when you sign the minutes, we'll make sure it's included in that too.
Okay.
Or it's sign, I guess you'd sign the approval letter, not the minutes. We'll make
Right,
sure-
when I sign the approval, yes.
Yeah, we'll make sure it's
I'll-
attached to the
I'll make-
approval letter.
I'll look at it, make sure that it's in there before I sign it. Okay. Anything else on this? All right. As screen fencing is an optional component. Okay. So it's okay. They've here in reference, I guess that's what it means. In number 18, they're gonna install the 4-inch landscape defense. And then exhibit 2. Okay. Okay, all right, I like that. All right. Do I hear a motion to, what? Go ahead, ask. That's what we're here for.
I just want to make sure zoning is, staff is comfortable with this. So just the way I'm reading this, number 15, like the hardship results from the conditions of peculiar. This is all referring to this diagram though, correct?
Yes,
Because-
where it says revised exhibit 22, that's this.
And number 14.
Mm-hmm.
So you guys are, okay, everybody's comfortable, okay. All right, I'm good.
Okay, everybody's good? I do hear a motion to approve the finding of facts and conclusions of law for 00013.
Motion to approve.
Right, thank you, Mr. Shea. Do I hear a second?
Williamson second.
Okay. Mr. Davis?
Yeah.
Ms. Sun? Mr. Shea?
Yes.
Mr. Williamson?
Williamson, yes.
And Dryden, yes. So the finding of facts and conclusions of law are adopted. And the exhibits will be included in the final decision letters. Okay. And that was for 1003. All right, thank you. All right, and the second one we're going to look at is 00017. Okay, refresh our memories for that one, please.
Chick-fil-A.
Oh, the Chick-fil-A, that's right. Okay, thank you. All right.
So Solomon, number 27 is correct, because we had this conversation about the setback from the property line versus the curb, back of curb. Make sure that language is correct.
That's correct.
Yeah.
And you're gonna include the exhibit 8 and 9? That's what it says in number 28. It says see applicant's exhibit. Will they be included in the decision letter? It's number 29.
28 and 20.
Or 28, I'm sorry.
Right.
20, it's on the top of the second page. It says see applicants exhibit 8 and 9.
They're not in the package.
There's a reference to a number of exhibits in the findings, right, not. None of them are like based on or subject to conditions that are.
Oh, okay.
The variance was based on, so I don't know that we need to include them in the decision letter. It was more about the exhibits in their presentation. And so since those aren't directly related to the hardship findings, which
Okay.
start at 32, I think we'd be okay not to include them in the decision letter.
Okay.
Does that apply to exhibit 16 as well, that talks about the trees, shrubs, deep walls, like trees to remain in place?
If that is don't recall that was did they agree upon that as a condition? I don't recall.
Yeah.
All right, I'm seeing, so we could include that as a,
It's in the bold, I think, though.
yeah.
Yeah, it's in,
In that bold paragraph.
yeah, in the very front, under,
Oh, okay.
That's exactly correct. Sorry.
because they agreed to replace any damaged or just trees
Yes.
to the lane, and the replacement trees was selected from the city's approved list. In case when they make that, if they damage the roots, is what we were concerned with, the roots of the trees when they cut that piece out.
We'll include that in the decision letter then. Thank
Okay.
you for pointing that out.
I'm curious, John, before we get to. What is the check system for that fence case we just heard?
So what we'll do is we will send code back out to make sure that. Because what's gonna happen is now that code has got that decision, that letter still is valid saying you now need it. He's gonna have to figure out that property, figure out how he's gonna deal with that situation. So
The 30 days, 60 days?
Typically it's 30 days after that decision, and the code's gonna go out there and say, hey, what's your, what have you decided?
What's your plan?
And then ultimately, they will, if he ignores it, it's gonna be it's gonna start now in a monetary citation. So just like the same one with David's, not his client, the sheep, we're gonna send code back out to make sure it's been pulled up. And if it's not, then they're not gonna release that citation. Say it's been addressed.
Okay. All right.
And we can also appeal to Superior Court.
Yeah, I'm thinking that's probably what he's, based on his presentation.
This is what you were preparing for.
Right, that's what you, yes, because I think he's probably going to.
I can't believe that. He's too sweet.
But, well, I'll just.
Because the case might be appealed, it's still pending, let's wait 30 days before we talk about it.
All right, we're back to this now. We have to approve this, fine. What are we finding?
I make a motion to approve the finding of fact for the case number,
00017.
no, 0002.
Oh, well then why does it say? Yeah,
That's on the
okay,
bottom
two.
of the
Yeah,
page.
yeah, this one, right, okay.
With-
With conditions.
I make a motion to approve the finding of facts with exhibit 20, with the exhibits.
Okay. All right, do I hear a second?
Williamson second.
Okay, Mr. Davis,
Yes.
Ms. Sun, Mr. Shea,
Say yes.
Mr. Williamson,
Williamson, yes.
and I am yes, so it is approved. And we're not gonna approve the minutes because we have to have the additions of these finding of facts and conclusions of law. Is that correct or no?
You just aren't signing them.
Oh, we can approve them, I just can't sign them, okay, all right, okay, let's look at the minutes real quick, and I think, we've addressed everything that was in the minutes.
So these minutes include those two cases. Does that change anything that we have to do here to approve these minutes?
No, so the minutes just capture the decisions that were made at the last hearing. So your decision is reflected to grant the variance with the conditions. And then it references that the findings of facts would be adopted today. So next month's, when we come back to approve today's minutes, the decision you all just made on the findings of fact would be referenced in those minutes. So.
But what actually transpired and what we approved is what's in these minutes. All right, do I hear a motion to approve the minutes?
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Davis. Do I hear a second? Thank you, Ms. Sun. All right, Mr. Williamson,
Williamson, yes.
Mr. Shea,
Say yes.
Ms. Sun, Mr. Davis, and Dryden, yes. Okay, so we approved the minutes from the April 29th meeting. All right. Thank you all very much. This meeting is now adjourned.
There's breakfast sandwiches in the room next door, I believe.
So we're using the microphone.